So last night there was 8 different primaries, including the state of California, huge states voting here, and lots of progressives in those races. And some of them were definitely losses. Obviously, I was backing Allison Hartson in the Senate race in California. She did not win. And then you had a lot of good Just Democrats who lost, like Rosa Calderon, Doug Applegate, and the list goes on. And yes, we had losses in a bunch of different states: Iowa, Montana, California, New Jersey, et cetera. But I want to make sure that you guys know about the victories as well. And not just for Just Democrats, but for all the different parts of the progressive movement. And I really want to applaud some of the other groups that did wonderful work in these races. And these were really important victories in races where there was a lot of attention paid to progressives versus establishment Democrats. So first, let's go to the 45th district in California, where we had Katie Porter, who was backed by Senator Elizabeth Warren, against David Min. So I'm going to tell you all about that race. The incumbent there is Representative Mimi Walters, and they were vying to take her on in California. The top two, no matter which party advanced to the general election. So Mimi Walters being the incumbent advanced. The question was it going to be Katie Porter, the progressive, or David Min, more establishment Democrat who advanced? So first, let me go to The Intercept here. David Dayen and Ryan Grimm writing yet another great article about this. They explained that Min, a former Senator Chuck Schumer staffer, Center for American Progress fellow, an assistant professor at Porter's school, UC Irvine, had the backing of the state's party and the New Democrats. That's a Wall Street-friendly bloc that supplied 27 of the 33 House Democratic votes in favor of the recent bank deregulation bill. So these guys who are pro-bankers and pro-donors backing David Min. So did he win? Well, as you can tell, obviously we're celebrating. He did not. Katie Porter, the progressive hero, won. So the Grimm and Dayen explained further. Min, meanwhile, was hesitant to embrace Medicare for all and ran a slashing race attacking Porter's credentials. Porter ran on battling big banks, expanding Social Security, reversing the Trump tax cuts, and establishing Medicare for all. And she won. Those are all very progressive positions, and got her a solid victory, and she moves forward to the general election. And obviously here at the Young Turks, look, this is the home of progressives. We cover all these progressive issues for you. We cover the primaries every time live, tyt.com/live, or get our app by entering TYT in the App Store, or become a member and you get all this coverage at tyt.com/join. So we did tell you about some of these races last night, or a lot of these races, and I want to tell you about more of them here that they highlighted. So they explain about how Katie Porter won. And The Intercept does a wonderful job of covering this as well. They explain she did it with the aid of Emily's List, but also from a couple of progressive groups that made this a threshold race: Democracy for America and the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. They both targeted the seat as a signature skirmish in the battle for what it means to be a Democrat in this country, and they labeled it as such. So this is not Monday morning quarterback. They said, we'll get to find out who's better, progressives here or the establishment. And that's how Porter put it as well. So DFA, Democracy for America, made 43,000 calls into the district, and both sent staffers to knock on some of the 100,000 doors the campaign hit. And we talked to Cara Eastman, who won as a Just Democrat in Nebraska in an upset victory a couple of weeks ago. We talked to her last night. She said the same thing. Her volunteers knocked on 60,000 doors in her district. So you're beginning to see that the key to victory is getting out there and actually meeting the voters and knocking on doors, and it even beats a ton of spending that comes in on television advertising from the establishment. So here it was good to have some allies, and Adam Green talked about the win from PCCC and how it was a win for the Warren wing. But to me, more important than that, win for progressives and for grassroots organizing. Giant win. Now let's go to another race that we heavily featured on the Young Turks. The New Democrats suffered another defeat in a race that pitted the two camps of the party against each other in San Diego's 50th district. Ammar Campa-Najjar, who ran as a progressive with the backing of the Justice Democrats, PCCC, and Democracy for America, beat Josh Buettner, endorsed by the New Democrats and backed by the Wall Street-friendly Representative Joe Crowley, the chair of the House Democratic Caucus. Crowley's got his own primary against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That's coming up in a couple of weeks in New York. But Crowley and the Wall Street guys, of course, backed Buettner, even though he was running in 5th place, but they poured a ton of money in. But Ammar Campa-Najjar had 700 volunteers. Same thing, grassroots energy winds up beating a huge money from the Wall Street corporate Democrats. So now let me go on to a third example. There's another race that we featured heavily. This was New Mexico's 1st district, and they explained at The Intercept that that district had Deb Haaland, Antoinette Sedillo Lopez, and the prosecutor Damon Martinez squaring off. Sedillo Lopez, a civil rights attorney, had the backing of some national progressive groups such as Justice Democrats and the Working Families Party, as well as Latino Victory, which spent heavily on her. Martinez, meanwhile, got a big boost in spending from the super PAC tied to No Labels. That is another corporate Democrat group. But Haaland, who's poised to become the first Native American member of Congress and had the support of the Congressional Black Caucus PAC and environmental group 350.org, beat both of them. So that's another great case of 2 different progressives in the race against the corporate Democrat. The corporate Democrat with more money defeated by an actual progressive, Deb Haaland. She is very likely to win that race in the general election. So she is very, very likely to be the first Native American woman in Congress. What I care about more, that's a great thing, but what I care about more is policy, and she is deeply, deeply progressive. So I like that just Democrats and Working Families Party were working together, and Sedillo Lopez was a wonderful candidate who I interviewed on our show Rebel Headquarters. But another progressive winning is very good news. So the key there was to make sure that Martinez did not win, and he didn't. So the corporate Democrat loses again. Now, Intercept points out a more local race that we did not cover that I thought was also really interesting. And at the end, I'm going to tell you about ranked choice voting and what a difference it made for progressives in San Francisco. So first, one more example here. In northern New Mexico, the Working Families Party top recruit for the night, Susan Herrera, pulled off a landslide upset in a state legislative race that the local press called the end of a political era. The Working Families Party spent more than $60,000 on the race, and she knocked off a 25-year incumbent, Representative Debbie Rodella, in an area that is solidly Democratic but thought to be socially conservative. So beating a 25-year incumbent ain't no small thing. Another lesson learned there is in local races, progressives can have the financial advantage because $60,000 in a local race like that is a lot of money. But if you pool your resources together, as Working Families Party did there, you wind up getting a landslide election victory. Wolf-pac, fighting to get money out of politics, is a nonpartisan group, but they also spend in local races, and trust me that works, and it sends a message to a lot of the other politicians on an issue that everybody cares about. Now, speaking of voting though, and free and fair elections, that brings us to the final story, which might be actually the most interesting of all. I mean, these progressive victories against, in highly featured races against establishment Democrats is wonderful. But how you vote is a huge part of the process and part of the problem, unfortunately, in this country. Well, in San Francisco, for the mayor's race, they have ranked choice voting. So let's see how that turned out. The establishment was also dealt a blow in San Francisco, The Intercept explains, where business-friendly candidate London Breed came out on top in the first round of voting. Oh, well, that sounds like bad news, but hold. The city uses a ranked choice system in which voters rank candidates on their ballot instead of voting for just one. If no one gets a majority of votes in the first round, the next preference votes are counted until a candidate gets the most of the votes. The left had split its votes between Mark Leno and Jane Kim. I had interviewed Jane Kim, and she talked about how they were working together in this unique system. Now, that gave Breed a lead with 36% to Leno's 26% and Kim's 21.5% in the first tally. Without ranked choice voting, that would have been the end of it, and Breed would have been declared the victor, and then hence the establishment would have won that race. But that's not how ranked choice voting works. So, but with ranked choice votes, they explain, the bulk of Kim's support shifted to Leno, putting him on top. Now, Kim talked to us about that when I had her on the show and said Mark Leno and Jane Kim working together and actually cooperating in the middle of the race, not after the race, in the middle of the race, saying, hey, if you like him best, put him at 1, put me at 2. If you like me best, put me at 1, put him at 2. And guess what? That totally worked. So the progressive candidate, because of ranked choice voting, came out on top. Isn't it amazing when democracy works and functions as it should to give the voters what they actually want and to represent the will of the voters in a system that works? We can have that democracy. We got to work towards it, and sometimes we got to fight towards it. So I love that San Francisco has that system. I love that all these different progressive groups working on different campaigns pushed forward and got these amazing progressive victories. And by the way, they didn't talk about it in the Intercept, but I should also mention Audrey Denny won her race as a Just Democrat in the California's 1st district, meaning that she will go on to the runoff against a Republican incumbent. So progressive victories for all the groups involved. So look, our job is to cover all the news for you guys. So there were losses and there were victories. For these new groups, though, it is amazing what they're able to accomplish in a short period of time and the number of victories that they have put up on the board. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.